The wind had teeth that night. It rattled the loose boards of the barn and whistled through the cracks of the ranch house as though it meant to peel the roof away. Winter lingered late that year, sinking its claws into the Wyoming plains, and every man with sense had long since brought his stock close, hay piled high, wood stacked higher. Yet Samuel Harper slept light, as he always did, the weight of a soldier's years never fully shed. A sound pricked him awake, soft, muffled, not the kind the wind made. He lay still on his cot, listening. It came again, faint and low, like a whisper carried on straw. The barn. Sam swung his legs over the side of the bed. Cold boards bit his bare feet. He reached for the rifle propped in the corner and pulled on his boots without socks. No lantern. He didn't want whoever or whatever was out there to see his light coming. The yard lay silvered under moonlight, fences casting long black lines across the snow-crusted ground. His breath rose in clouds, and the only sound was the creak of old leather as he shifted the rifle in his hands. The barn loomed ahead, dark and still. He pushed the door wide enough to slip through and let his eyes adjust to the gloom. The horses stirred, stamping nervously. Then he heard it again, a rustle, followed by the sharp intake of breath, quickly smothered. "Who's there?" His voice cracked the silence like a whip. Nothing. He lifted the rifle, every sense taut. A shadow moved in the far corner, behind stacked hay bales. Then another, smaller. "Step out," he ordered. Slow. What emerged was no thief, nor drifter come to steal a horse. A woman rose from the straw, unsteady, clutching a threadbare blanket to her chest. Her hair hung in tangled ropes, face smeared with dirt, lips cracked and bloodied. She was barefoot, shivering so hard her bones seemed to rattle. Behind her, two children blinked wide eyes at him from the hay, thin arms wrapped around their knees. For a long moment no one spoke. Sam held the rifle steady, though his gut tightened. "Please," the woman whispered, voice raw as if it hadn't been used in days. "Don't shoot." The girl beside her, no more than 6, clutched her mother's skirts, while the boy, older by 2 years, put himself half in front of them, small chin lifted in a gesture braver than his strength could support. Sam's jaw tightened. "What are you doing in my barn?" She looked down, ashamed. "We had nowhere else." Her words trembled, but they carried the plain weight of truth. Still, truth didn't matter out here the way it should. Strangers brought trouble. Always. He glanced at her again, taking in more than he wished. The bruises on her arms weren't made by the cold. Rope burns marked her wrists. She held the blanket tighter, as though she feared the shame of her condition more than the barrel leveled at her. "Get up," Sam said. "All of you." The children scrambled up, swaying from weakness. The boy's legs were stick-thin, knees knocking. The little girl stumbled and clung to her mother. Sam's grip on the rifle never wavered, but something else inside him did. These weren't thieves. They weren't runaways worth shooting in the dark. They were half dead, already, and the thought of shoving them out into the frost felt like the kind of cruelty a man didn't come back from. He jerked his chin toward the house. "Move." The woman's eyes widened. She hesitated, then guided the children forward. They crossed the yard in silence, the crunch of their bare feet on ice loud in the stillness. Sam followed, rifle lowered but ready, every step weighed down with questions he hadn't asked. Inside, the fire had burned low to embers. Sam set the rifle by the hearth and threw on a couple of logs, light flaring to reveal the strangers more clearly. The woman stood in the corner, clutching the blanket as though it were armor. The children hovered against her, pale, hollow-cheeked, trembling from more than the cold. Sam pointed to a chair. "Sit." She obeyed, slow and cautious, as though any sudden move might spook him into violence. He rummaged through the cupboard, came out with half a loaf of cornbread gone hard and a tin cup of water. He set them on the table. The children didn't wait for permission. They lunged forward, tearing the bread in pieces, shoving it into their mouths. Crumbs spilled across the table. The woman tried to slow them, murmuring soft words, but Sam held up a hand. "Let 'em eat." For a while, The only sound was chewing, desperate and fast. Sam leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching. He told himself he was just making sure they didn't steal. But the truth was plainer. He couldn't look away from the way they devoured each bite like it was salvation. When the bread was gone, the woman whispered, "Thank you." He studied her in the firelight. She was younger than he first thought, mid-20s, maybe. Dirt and hunger had carved lines into her face, but her eyes were sharp, wary, the color of storm clouds over the plains. "What's your name?" Sam asked. Silence stretched. She glanced at the children, then back at him. "Clara." "And them?" "Thomas and Eliza." Sam nodded once. "Where you from, Clara?" Her throat worked. "East." "That's a long walk without shoes." "No answer." "Who you running from?" At that, her eyes darted toward the door, fear sparking. She drew the blanket tighter. "Please don't let them find us." "Them." The word sat heavy in the room. Sam's gut clenched. He'd seen enough of men and their cruelties to know what her bruises meant, what those words carried. But taking her in meant taking on her enemies too. He stoked the fire higher, not answering right away. He had lived 5 years since the war ended with nothing but silence for company, and silence had suited him. It kept men alive. Now here sat a woman with rope scars, 2 half-starved children, and a shadow following close behind. "Upstairs," he said at last. "Spare room. You can sleep there tonight." Clara's eyes widened with disbelief. I didn't say you could stay." His voice was sharp, final. "One night." She bowed her head, rising to gather the children. As they passed him, Eliza looked up, crumbs still on her chin, and whispered, "Thank you, Mr." Sam's throat tightened, but he said nothing. The house settled into uneasy quiet. He heard their footsteps above, the creak of bed springs as they lay down. Sam poured himself a finger of whiskey, sat by the fire, and stared at the flames. He told himself he'd send them on their way come morning. That was the sensible choice, the only choice. But the image of them huddled in the barn, thin as shadows, wouldn't leave him. Neither would Clara's words. "Don't let them find us." Whoever they were, they'd be coming. Sam set the glass down untouched. He rose, took the rifle, and sat at the table by the door. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. His eyes stayed fixed on the night, finger resting easy on the trigger guard. Dawn was still hours away, but he knew he wouldn't be sleeping. The morning came hard and pale, the kind of light that flattened everything into shades of frost and gray. Samuel Harper stepped out onto the porch with coffee in hand, steam rising against the cold. He scanned the horizon, eyes moving slow but sure. The plains stretched empty in all directions, save for a line of hills crouched in the distance. It looked peaceful, but he'd learned long ago not to trust appearances. Behind him, the door creaked open. He turned to see Clara standing there, wrapped in a blanket, her hair combed back with her fingers. She looked cleaner this morning, though the shadows under her eyes hadn't lifted. The children clung to her skirts like pups afraid to stray. "You'll want to eat," Sam said, motioning toward the table inside. "There's beans left in the pot." She hesitated, then nodded. Thomas tugged at her arm, hungry enough to push aside fear, and she guided them back in. Sam followed, setting his cup down. He watched them spoon beans with quiet desperation, though Clara forced herself to eat slowly, mindful of appearances. "You can help with chores," Sam said, "if you stay today." Her gaze flicked up. "You mean to keep us?" "I mean to see what kind of trouble I've got." He kept his tone even. "You'll earn your keep. Nothing's free out here." A flicker of pride straightened her back. "I know how to work." Sam gave a curt nod. He wasn't looking for gratitude, only order. By mid-morning, Clara was hanging wet clothes by the line while the children gathered kindling near the woodpile. Thomas carried more than his little shoulders ought to bear, but he did it without complaint. Eliza, her cheeks pink with cold, followed him close, laughing now and then at the way a stray chicken pecked at her skirt. Their sounds, light and small, stirred something in Sam he hadn't heard on this land in years. Still, he stayed guarded. Trouble came with every smile if you weren't careful. Later, he found Clara by the pump, sleeves rolled, skin raw from scrubbing. She worked with a quiet determination that told him she was no stranger to labor. When she caught him watching, she straightened. "You've been alone long?" she asked, voice tentative. "Long enough." She studied him a moment. "And you don't ask why we're here?" "I did ask. You didn't answer." Her mouth tightened. "Some things ain't safe to tell." Sam let that sit. He wasn't a man to pry. Not unless prying was survival. Yet her words sharpened the edge of suspicion he already carried. If she feared speaking, it meant whatever she'd fled was close enough to hear. The second day passed much the same, though small cracks of ease began to show. Sam caught Thomas watching him mend a fence rail. The boy's eyes held a hunger that wasn't for food, but for example, for the way a man worked with steady hands. Sam handed him a hammer without a word, and the boy's face lit like a lantern. Together they fixed the rail, the boy's strokes clumsy but eager. Eliza followed Clara everywhere, carrying little scraps of cloth, pretending to sew. Once she toddled up to Sam with a crooked piece of fabric she'd stitched with a thorn and string, and though he meant to wave her off, he found himself ruffling her hair instead. Clara watched these moments with a look that unsettled him more than a rifle barrel could. Hope. But hope had a way of turning quick to grief. On the third morning, riders appeared. Sam spotted them from the ridge while checking the cattle. Two dark specks against the horizon, moving slow but deliberate, cutting a line toward his land. His stomach clenched. He didn't know them, but he didn't need to. Out here, men didn't wander without reason. He returned to the yard, jaw set. Clara was at the well. The moment she saw his face, her hands froze on the rope. "They've found us," she whispered. "Maybe they're just passing." "No," her voice cracked with certainty. "It's them." The children sensed her fear and ran to her side. Sam weighed his choices fast. Running wasn't one. This was his land, and he'd not be chased from it. But sheltering strangers already had him standing in another man's sights. The riders reached the gate near noon. Two of them, both broad-shouldered, dust covering their coats. One had a scar running down his cheek, twisting his smile into something cruel. The other spat tobacco into the dirt as his eyes roved over the yard. "Morning," the scarred one called. "Fine spread you've got." Sam stood with his rifle easy in hand. "Don't recall inviting company." The man's grin widened. "Lost some stock. Figured maybe it strayed this way. Seen anything? A woman, couple kids?" Behind Sam, Clara stiffened. He felt the air change, heavy with dread. He met the man's gaze without blinking. "Ain't seen a soul, but my own." The scarred man studied him, suspicion flickering in his eyes. His partner shifted in the saddle, restless. At length, the man spat into the dirt and tugged his reins. "Well, if you do see anything, you let us know." They rode off slow, but Sam didn't lower the rifle until the horizon swallowed them. When he turned, Clara was shaking. She pressed the children close, tears spilling silent. "You lied for us," she said, voice breaking. Sam said nothing. He didn't need to. That night, when the children slept, Clara sat by the fire. Shadows painted her face, deepening the hollows of her cheeks. She stared into the flames as if gathering courage from them. "I was married once," she said softly. Sam looked up. "He sold me." Her hands twisted in her lap. "Gambled me away like I was a horse. Men took me, used me. When I ran, they came after me. Always after me. I couldn't leave the children. I won't." Her voice cracked on the last word. Sam felt anger coil in his gut, not at her, but at the faceless men who thought a woman could be bartered like a saddle. He took a long breath, steadying himself. "They'll be back," he said. She nodded. "They don't stop." For a moment, silence stretched, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Then Clara looked at him, eyes fierce through her tears. "You should send us away. If you keep us here, they'll kill you too." Sam met her gaze, the weight of years pressing behind his eyes. "This is my land. Nobody runs me off it." The days that followed carried a strange rhythm, a mix of dread and fragile normalcy. Clara worked the kitchen and mended clothes. Thomas shadowed Sam in the fields, learning the heft of tools and the patience of waiting on livestock. Eliza sang soft tunes to the chickens, her voice high and sweet as a lark. And yet, every sunset brought the same question in Sam's mind. When would the riders return? The answer came on a night with no moon. The barn door burst open with a crash, splinters flying. Sam jerked awake to the sound of horses screaming. Shouts followed, harsh and ugly. He grabbed his rifle, heart pounding, and rushed into the yard. Muzzle flashes lit the dark, men firing wild into the air to frighten. One bullet punched through the water trough, spraying splinters. Sam raised the rifle and fired. One rider yelped, toppling from his horse. Another cursed and wheeled his mount, returning fire. Clara's scream cut through the night. She stood at the doorway with the children clinging to her skirts, eyes wide with terror. Sam shouted for her to get down, then squeezed another round off. A rider bolted, but two more pressed closer, circling the barn. The fight lasted only minutes, but it stretched into an eternity of smoke and fury. At last, the remaining men pulled back, dragging their wounded. The thunder of hooves faded into the distance, leaving only the echo of gunfire hanging in the cold air. Sam lowered the rifle, chest heaving. His shoulder burned where a bullet had grazed him, hot blood soaking his shirt. Clara rushed forward, pressing her hands to the wound. Her children cried into her skirts, sobbing uncontrollably. "They'll come again," she whispered. Sam's jaw hardened. "Then we'll be ready." The night after the attack passed with no sleep. Samuel Harper sat at the table, rifle across his knees, listening to the restless shifting of horses in the barn and the faint sobs of children upstairs. Clara had cleaned the wound at his shoulder, binding it with strips torn from her own dress, her hands steady though her eyes trembled. He had grunted through the pain, saying nothing, but the weight of her care pressed on him heavier than the bullet had. When dawn broke, pale and thin, he stepped out into the yard. The air was raw, smelling of gunpowder and burnt wood where bullets had struck. A hole gaped in the barn wall, splintered wide, and one of the hens lay dead in the dirt, feathers scattered like snow. It was a scene of violation, of a place that had been his sanctuary turned battlefield. Clara came to the doorway, the children clinging behind her skirts. She looked at him with a face half-shadowed, half-hopeful. "They'll be back," she said. He spat into the dirt, jaw tightening. "Let 'em come." But even as he said it, he knew the truth. They wouldn't stop, not until they had dragged Clara back into chains and silenced the children's cries. This was no simple quarrel, this was survival. By midday, Sam was setting traps along the ridge. He hammered iron teeth into the earth where horses might tread, strung wire between fence posts, scattered nails near the path. His movements were precise, practiced. A soldier's habits die hard. Thomas trailed after him, eyes wide. "Can I help?" Sam glanced down. The boy's face was pinched with hunger, but determination shone there, a fire too old for his years. Sam handed him a coil of wire. "Hold this. Tight." The boy obeyed, small hands white with strain. Sam watched him for a moment, then gave a short nod. "You'll make a man yet." The words lit Thomas's face brighter than any fire. Back at the house, Clara patched holes in old blankets, her fingers nimble despite their rawness. Eliza hummed softly as she played with wooden spoons, the tune high and sweet. The sound steadied Sam more than whiskey ever had. That evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, Clara joined him on the porch. Her hair was braided now, her cheeks scrubbed clean, and for the first time he saw not just a fugitive but a woman with strength carved into her bones by hardship. "I should take them and go," she said quietly. "We're bringing death to your door." He shook his head. "This land's seen death before. Ain't leaving it now." She studied him, eyes searching. "Why? You owe us nothing." Sam looked out across the fields, the fence posts standing like silent sentries. "Spent years with nothing but ghosts for company. Thought I was fine with it. But seeing those little ones laugh, hearing a woman's voice in the house again," he paused, throat thick, "made me remember I ain't dead yet." Clara's lips parted, but no words came. Instead, She laid her hand lightly on his arm. It was a simple touch, but it carried the weight of trust, of unspoken gratitude. The days turned tense with waiting. Each sunrise stretched like a wire ready to snap. Sam drilled Clara in the use of a pistol, showing her how to steady her grip, how to breathe before squeezing the trigger. Her hands shook at first, but by the third shot, she found her aim, determination stiffening her spine. "You'll need to fight," Sam said. She nodded. "I will." Thomas begged for lessons too, but Sam shook his head. "Your job's to keep your sister safe. That's fight enough." The boy swallowed his protest, nodding with solemn pride. Then, before dawn one morning, the sound came, the low thunder of hooves rolling over the ridge. Sam rose from his cot in a single motion, rifle in hand. Clara was already awake, gathering the children, her face pale, but set. "They're here," she whispered. Sam stepped outside. 5 riders this time, dark shapes against the gray sky, moving like wolves circling prey. The scarred man led them, teeth flashing in a grin that promised blood. "Morning, rancher," the man called. "We come for what's ours." Sam leveled his rifle. "Ain't nothing here belongs to you." The man laughed. "Everything out here belongs to whoever's willing to take it. Step aside." Behind Sam, Clara stood in the doorway, pistol clutched tight, children at her skirts. Her fear was plain, but so was her resolve. The riders charged. Gunfire split the dawn. Sam's rifle cracked, dropping the lead horse. The beast screamed, tumbling into the dirt, throwing its rider hard. Clara fired from the porch, the bullet grazing another man's arm. He howled, spinning his horse away. Chaos erupted. Bullets tore through wood and glass, the house shuddering under the assault. Sam ducked behind the water trough, reloading fast, his hands steady despite the roar of blood in his ears. He fired again, dropping another rider. One man dismounted, rushing low toward the porch. Clara's pistol clicked empty. The outlaw raised his revolver, only to be met by Thomas, who hurled a stone with all his might. It struck the man's temple, staggering him just long enough for Sam's bullet to finish the job. "Inside!" Sam roared, and Clara dragged the children back, shielding them with her body. The scarred man circled wide, firing wild. His horse pounded close, mud flying. Sam braced, but his rifle jammed, mud clogging the mechanism. The outlaw bore down on him, revolver raised, eyes blazing with triumph. Then Clara stepped from the doorway, pistol reloaded, stance firm. She fired. The shot slammed into the scarred man's shoulder, pitching him from the saddle. He crashed into the dirt, gun flying from his hand. Sam rushed forward, boot pressing hard to the man's chest, rifle muzzle shoved under his chin. The outlaw spat blood, sneering even in defeat. "You think this ends with me? Others will come. She's marked. Always will be." Sam's jaw clenched. For a moment, he considered ending it there, pulling the trigger and silencing the threat forever. But Clara's voice cut through the haze. "Don't." He looked back. Her eyes met his, tired, pleading but resolute. She didn't want her children to see another killing. Sam lowered the rifle. "You ride," he growled. "Ride far, and if I ever see you again, I'll finish it." The man coughed, staggered to his feet, and fled, clutching his wound. The others followed, dragging their dead and wounded, the thunder of hooves fading into distance. Silence fell heavy. Smoke hung in the air, mingling with the smell of blood and gunpowder. Sam stood breathing hard, muscles taut, watching the horizon until the last echo vanished. Clara approached, pistol still clutched but trembling now. She looked at him, eyes glistening. "You saved us." He shook his head. "We saved each other." The children ran to him, clinging to his legs, their small bodies shaking with sobs. Sam felt something break loose inside, something long buried. He knelt, wrapping them in his arms, holding tight. The house was scarred, the barn riddled with holes, but the family inside still stood. For the first time in years, Sam felt the ground under him not as a burden, but as a place to belong. That night, as Clara tended his wound by firelight, he spoke quietly. "You can stay, as long as you want. This land's your same as mine. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she smiled through them. We'll make it home. Sam looked at the children curled by the hearth, already asleep despite the day's terror. His chest tightened with a feeling he'd thought long dead. Hope. The flames crackled, shadows dancing on walls, and the old soldier found peace in their glow. Out on the plains, the wind carried whispers of danger yet to come, but within these walls, a family had been forged in fire and blood. Whatever the frontier threw next, they would face it together. And perhaps, Sem thought as he closed his eyes, that was the truest kind of victory a man could claim.